Quebec is the capital of metal in North America.
The great thing about being in Montreal is that there's basically all types of metal.
There's some good bands from Montreal, and when I just try to listen to some other bands, I just hear some copycat of what I'm hearing here.
People have always looked to Quebec as a kind of a breeding ground for all things hard rock.
If you're a metalhead, like, you should be in a band. If you're a Montreal metalhead, you should be in another band.
Yeah, there's so many metalheads here and so many of them pick up instruments that you just have a lot of people to pick and choose from. And so it's kind of easy to throw together a band. That's why there's so many. I mean, there's tons of local bands here.
There's lots of bands.
Lots of bands, and it seems like, after even when the bands aren't playing, they're getting together to go watch shows and getting together afterwards.
There's a strong
to go party. So
there
it has been a very big metal community.
It becomes like an extra family right here.
I'm Daniel Glick, work for Evenco. We produce heavy MTL and TO.
I'm Nick Farkas, I work for Evenco as well. We produce about 800 shows a year between Vermont and Newfoundland, and we do the 2 metal festivals.
What do we have here? What do we have? We are at Studio CME. I'm Chris Donaldson. That's a metal producer in Montreal. I've produced a few bands, like the most well-known are the Agonist, Beneath the Massacre, Neuraxis, Last Felony, Cryptopsy.
I'm Nick Guerin. You're at Labyrinth Boutique in Montreal on St. Catherine Street. I run Dungeon Works Productions, which is a booking company for concerts in Montreal, and I also manage the office here at the store on the distributor side, Artemone Trading.
I'm Michelle Ayub. I'm Nick's business partner for Dungeon Works. I help him run it. I also work as a freelance video editor.
All this Montreal scene, everybody's like, what's up with Montreal? And then all those bands are emerging from here, So I think, there's a lot of people around the world that actually knows that this city is getting bigger for extreme music, But I don't know if people in Montreal are aware of that. We're just doing our things. There's no band that thinks he's better than another band or something. I think everybody's just friendly with each other.
Well, I mean, there's I want to say classics now, but they're almost considered classics. Cryptopsy, like you mentioned, Gorguts. Those are 2 very forward-thinking bands that had an effect on the overall scene. They were very inspiring because you could tell, or we could tell, is they're innovators. They're not just copying whatever's out, whatever the thing of the day is. They're innovators, and it's inspiring to watch and then learn from that, and then from there, hopefully we'll create something of our own through that too.
We are the Raxes from Montreal!
I think some of the best bands come from this province. I mean, you look at Voivod, who, there's so many bands that have stated that, they were a huge reference for them, a huge factor in them getting into the metal. And I think over the years there's always been a sense of interesting stuff coming out of this market.
Back then, Voivod, it's probably one of the first bands that has weird chords like that, like weird voicing and guitar work that people probably got influenced over the years with that. Also, like, there's some bands, like I said, Cryptopsy, that really wanted to push the extreme of speed, I think, back then. And some other bands that really blended some melodic stuff with really extreme music too. So I really think that Montreal is a city that has an impact on the metal genre all over the world,
Now
It's all Voivod's fault.
Voivod. Big Voivod dork over here.
Yeah, Voivod is definitely, you know, the pioneering band for Montreal metal.
I don't know how many bands growing up booking, you know, punk and metal bands coming through town. They're like, oh my God, this is the city where Voivod is from, and they, you know, the reverence that they were held in such high esteem.
No, I had no idea that, like, I don't know, 26 or 27 years down the road, I'd still be touring the planet. Even because we come from northern Quebec, a very small town, and we were French-speaking Canadian, and we had no idea that we would get a contract with Metal Blade in LA when we were still living at our parents' place up north. So that was the first surprise, that we got a contract for the first album, War and Pain. And then we signed with Noise in Germany, and then kept touring in Germany, recording in Berlin. So it all became like a dream come true.
But someday you'll go home, far away, on your own.
Somewhere along the way we struck a chord, and I don't know if it's the progressive rock side, the sci-fi side, or maybe, as I was saying, the socially oriented lyrics. I have no idea, but we do have a cult following.
There was a huge fan base for progressive rock back in the 70s, whether it was like Yes or Genesis or was it Gentle Giant, I believe, and those kind of bands were very at the forefront of cutting edge and innovation back then.
A lot of those progressive rock bands like Genesis, for example, were headlining shows at the Forum in Montreal, in Quebec City, at the Colisée de Québec, before there were something in the States. They were actually coming here, doing big shows in the Quebec province, and being these huge bands, and nobody gave a damn about them in the States yet.
I think those fans of prog rock could find something to like in progressive metal acts that started coming out, who were directly influenced by those progressive rock bands, such as Voivod. And then after the whole thrash era, Quebec was a very innovative place for death metal, and a lot of complex and technical music, and a push forward for terms of musicianship.
Voivod came up, then mixed it up like metal and punk, and you know, and being really intricate and technical at the same times. And then it spawned like a new generation, like Gorguts came along, and Cryptopsy, and then, you know, it all followed that thing. Because when you look at it, there's not a particular sound in the Quebec metal style. It's more about all the bands like know how to play their instruments, and they're all different from one another.
I think it's great that bands like Cataclysm, Gorguts, and Martyr, and Cryptopsy, and there are tons of bands from Quebec touring the planet. We feel like we're like the lumberjacks, you know, like cutting down the trail, and I feel proud that we made it happen for these people, and I'm happy for them that they are, because I see tons of shirts around the planet from bands from Montreal, you know, and I feel proud of that all the time, you know, but it was hard work.
band like Despised Icon was very successful recently, and they were tagged as a deathcore band, which is something I would see as an American influence, but they pushed it once again in a Montreal direction with great musicianship and technicality, and they've really led the charge of those kind of bands. And you know, it's a shame that they decided to call it quits.
Quoi? Donne-nous 10 minutes puis on va venir t'aider. On va venir à merch.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Our merch guy's tripping because he can't find a van anymore.
You can't really put a label on any kind of metal that's coming out of there. You got bands like us that will blend like different types of metal. You got straight black metal bands, you got hardcore bands, you got death metal bands.
Yeah, Despised Icon are probably one, or Iron Descendants. I think they're really great too. At least they're not really well known. They used to be known, but I think they're really underground because their music is really, really freaking heavy. They really did something like push the extreme of weirdness, you know. And Despised Icon, they really kind of create a genre which is called like the deathcore kind of thing, and they really did it well. So I think those bands really influenced me a lot.
I mean, you've also got a lot of bands that have just been around for so long that are still plowing through, and Neuraxis comes to mind, and they're just never stopped touring, and they've been at it for 17 years now. And
once again, this is so curious, through its red. Sons of the lost, kingdom of fire, turning to death, lost in higher.
It's such an open community. Like, I think the European nature and the influences, like there's so many different influences.
There's also something about the Quebecois culture which is very independent and unique, and they like to feel that way. So being that metal, you know, is a very underground, or extreme metal is a very underground genre. I mean, maybe it speaks to somebody who's more individualistic.
I think the culture kind of breeds a sense of rebellion, and what better music to rebel with than metal?
I think it's the poutine. Like you grow up all your life, you're eating poutine, and this pure form of awesomeness just turns into instant musical talents, especially for extreme metal bands. I think you just got to be inspired by the poutine and take it as it comes, you know, like a gift from the god of poutines, you know.
Couldn't add anything to that, actually. Perfect answer.
I think because it goes back generationally now. It's like your older brothers and your father. You know, we did an Iron Maiden show here when we did Iron Maiden.
The first heavy MTL.
Yeah, the first. When you saw, literally, I swear to God, grandfather, father, and son, like at heavy MTL.
I kind of feel like I have to bring up the parents here. Like Quebec, 20, 30 years ago, already embraced more extreme music, if you will, and they're passing that on to the next generation. And we have so many parents who come to our shows to check out their kids playing, and they're just so open to it. And that's not necessarily something I've seen, and this is with no disrespect, but like say compared to Toronto, I'm not seeing that same generational support.
We're also talking about a place that, you know, banned Elvis Presley back in his heyday and was largely controlled by the church. And since that's, I think they call it La Révolution Tranquille, basically there was, you know, repressed ideas were freed, let's say, in the 60s, and I think a lot of people enjoy, you know, heavier and more rebellious music just as a celebration of like the freedom. Like places like Brazil can be compared to our scene for similar reasons. I I'd say for the first time I'm seeing, you know, equal amounts of Anglophones and Francophones at my shows, underground shows for unsigned acts. So having the two neighborhoods come together and have fun together and hang out together en masse, let's say a large portion of people, it's something new, and I like to pride myself on the fact that I can put on shows like that and bring lots of unsigned bands or bands on small labels from across Canada and get everybody in Montreal from whatever background they're from interested in the show. That's what metal's about. It's a community. We care more about being metalheads and answering to metal rather than any other power, whether it be political or religious. I think metal comes first for the true metalhead.